The smarter you become, the quieter your world becomes. And with that quiet often comes a strange loneliness. The deeper your mind sees, the harder it becomes for others to walk beside you. And with every layer of truth you uncover, you may feel yourself drifting further away from the crowd. If these thoughts have ever stirred inside you, then this video is meant for you. Welcome to this space for those who are searching for truth within themselves. Here, we listen together, we learn together, and we walk side by side on the journey back to the essence of who we truly are. Before we go deeper, I want to ask you, have you ever felt that loneliness does not come from the absence of people, but from the absence of anyone who truly understands what lives inside you? If you have, share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story may resonate with many others who are listening right now. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the upcoming videos where we continue to uncover the hidden layers of psychology that Carl Jung once explored. The brighter your mind becomes, the lonelier your path seems to grow. You may not remember exactly when it started, only the one day you no longer felt at home anywhere. Not because you wanted to be different, but because you began to notice what others refused to see. A forced smile, a pause in the middle of a story, a subtle shift in tone. Tiny details that only you could recognize. You started to speak less, not because you had nothing to say, but because you realized so few were truly ready to hear what was on your mind. The distance began to form, not built by others, but born out of your clarity. People called you cold, too deep, too hard to connect with. But you knew it wasn't your personality they were describing, it was the depth of your soul. You tried to change, you laughed more, you spoke less, you simplified yourself just to fit in. But the truth didn't change. What others avoided was never your character, it was your perception. You withdrew, not out of pride, but out of exhaustion. Because you grew tired of folding yourself into frames that never belonged to you. And so, you chose silence. Not the silence of rebellion, but the silence of protection. Carl Jung called this individuation, the process of breaking free from collective illusions to become who you truly are. It is not a glorious path, it is a lonely one. Small talk begins to feel empty. Connections built on necessity rather than truth suffocate you. You see through it all, and that very sight sets you apart. Some leave the crowd not to stand out, but simply to breathe again. They don't choose isolation, they choose honesty. But honesty comes with a price, and the price of awareness is distance. Can you relate to this? Have you ever chosen silence, not because you didn't know what to say, but because you knew that if you spoke, your truth would not be received? Share that moment in the comments, because your story might be the mirror someone else needs today. Jung once wrote, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest achievement. One day, you will realize that you no longer need any proof to validate the clarity of your mind. You'll sit in a quiet room, in an undisturbed morning, in a moment where your thoughts no longer bend to please anyone else. And in that separation, you will feel something rare, no noise, yet no emptiness, no company, yet no loneliness. Only you and the truth within you. They may never understand you, they may see you as distant, as cold, even as difficult to love. But deep inside, you know you are more alive than ever. No chasing, no translating, no adjusting. You no longer need anyone to confirm your clarity. It already exists. And when you stand before the choice, to be accepted by pretending or to be misunderstood by being real, you already know the answer. Because only in truth can anything real ever truly belong to you. But behind this gift that separates you lies an even subtler trap. When others don't really see you at all, but only imagine you into someone they need. That is the projection trap. And that is the journey we will step into next. There is a form of loneliness that does not come from silence, but from being seen without ever truly being understood. People look at you and think they know you, but what they see is not you. It is merely the reflection of themselves. They place upon you their expectations, their wounds, their deficiencies, even their silent envy. In their eyes, you are no longer a human being, but only a mirror reflecting what remains unresolved within them. The most painful moment is when someone looks at you and says, "I understand you." Yet deep down, you know they do not. What they hold on to is not your true self, but a safer, softer, easier version they have built in their imagination. And though you may smile politely, there is still a quiet ache within, because you know that if your real self were ever revealed, they would withdraw, startled by a depth they never wished to face. Perhaps you have experienced this too. You may have tried to reveal a little honesty, to let a deeper part of yourself show through. But instead of closeness, you met with silence. Instead of warmth, you saw avoidance in their eyes. And so you learned to break the truth into smaller, easier pieces, offering only a lighter version of yourself just to keep the peace. But piece by piece, your true self began to fade away. Carl Jung called this phenomenon projection. When people cannot face what lies within themselves, they unconsciously throw their shadows onto others. They do not truly hear you. They hear only the echoes of their unmet needs. They do not truly see you. They see only the role they want you to play. You become the screen onto which they project their inner film, while your real being retreats further into the background. Have you ever felt this, that people were not connecting with you, but only with an image they had created of you? If so, share your story in the comments. Someone listening right now may realize they have lived the very same truth. And when you no longer fit the role they expect, they often walk away. Not because you were wrong, not because you failed, but because you no longer maintained the illusion they depended upon. And in that moment, a harsh truth reveals itself. What you once called connection was often nothing more than a temporary overlap of mutual needs. When the needs change, so too does the closeness. This grief is silent but heavy. It is not the grief of losing someone, but the grief of never having truly been seen at all. Yet from this crack, a new strength begins to grow. You realize that no one owes you understanding, just as you do not owe anyone a softened, more palatable version of yourself. You release the burden of needing to be understood, and instead choose something greater. You choose to be real. From then on, you no longer try to clarify yourself for others. You no longer twist to fit the roles they silently demand. You no longer allow your life to be consumed by projections that were never yours to carry. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In rejecting projection, you reclaim your fate. You are no longer what they need. You are who you are becoming. And as the role disappears, so too does their attention. What remains is not the silence of peace, but the emptiness of realizing that those who claimed to listen had only ever been listening to themselves through you. This is the projection trap, a prison not built of solitude, but of distorted mirrors. Escaping it does not mean finding someone who will finally see you. It means no longer betraying yourself just to be seen through someone else's eyes. But if projection can wound you this deeply, then what happens when your very vision itself becomes the burden? When you are not only misunderstood, but also see too much of what others are trying to hide. That is the curse we will step next. There is a kind of pain that does not come from blindness, but from vision, from seeing too much. No one asked you to notice, no one trained you to perceive the layers hidden beneath the surface, and yet you see. A simple sentence is spoken, and you hear not only the words, but the silence behind them. A quiet pause, and you feel the anger or grief that was never expressed. You walk into a room, and without meaning to, you can sense who is pretending, who is tense, who is trying to dominate, and who is hiding from themselves. You see, even when you don't want to. And this changes everything, not in a triumphant way, but in a way that makes others uneasy around you. You don't just hear language, you detect intention. You don't just see expressions, you recognize the masks behind them. You don't simply observe behavior, you sense the psyche moving beneath it all. What seems like a gift often feels like a burden, because you cannot turn it off. You cannot simply unsee what has been revealed. And the hardest part? You cannot always share it. For what you see is often exactly what others are running from. To speak it aloud would shatter their carefully constructed illusions. Carl Jung called this psychological consciousness, the moment when you stop reacting to appearances and begin to perceive the hidden engine of the human mind. But with this awareness comes exile. Others live in the story on the stage. You find yourself noticing the strings behind the curtain. They laugh at the play. You see the stitching that holds the costumes together. They believe the mask. You feel the trembling child beneath it. You long, sometimes desperately, to be naive again, to trust without question, to laugh without analyzing, to take words at face value without dissecting the shadows underneath. But once you see, you cannot unsee. That is the curse. Jung once wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." True loneliness is not the absence of presence, but the absence of shared perception. And so you stay quiet, not because you are afraid, but because you know the world isn't ready to hear what you have come to know. This silence, however, wears on you. Carrying so much truth alone begins to feel heavy. And yet you realize that you don't need to share it all. You don't need to force others to see what they are unwilling to see. You only need to remain faithful to your own seeing, to not betray what you know, to not deny the clarity that has awakened within you. And in that realization, you understand that this clarity is not only a curse, it is also a calling. A call to live in truth, even if you must walk that truth alone. Loneliness is no longer your enemy, but your final shelter, the last refuge for those who refuse to live inside illusion. But with this clarity, a deeper danger still emerges. For if seeing too much isolates you, then losing the ability to keep anything for yourself may destroy you. Because vision without protection, awareness without boundaries, leaves you vulnerable. This leads us to the next chapter, where silence is no longer passive, but becomes a strategy, a form of power that shields your depth. Silence is often misunderstood. People think it means absence, weakness, or withdrawal, but not every quiet person is afraid, and not every silence is empty. Sometimes silence is not a lack of response, it is a strategy, it is a boundary, it is the armor of those who have seen too much and refuse to waste themselves in battles that cannot be won. In the past, you may have reacted to every slight, defended yourself against every misunderstanding, tried to explain your intentions, and pleaded to be seen clearly. But slowly, you learned that the more you speak, the more your truth is distorted. Once your words leave your mouth, you lose control of them. They are filtered through someone else's wounds, twisted by their biases, and reshaped into something you never meant. So you stop giving away your depth so easily. You withhold, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Jung once wrote, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people." And silence becomes the space where you protect your light from being consumed by their shadows. Have you ever noticed how much people reveal when you stop feeding the conversation? Their impatience surfaces. Their insecurity grows louder. Their need to dominate becomes clear. In silence, people show you who they really are. And so, you realize that silence is not the loss of power. It is power in disguise. It allows you to see who uses words as weapons, who manipulates through emotion, who tests you with performative silence just to bait your reaction. And instead of falling into their game, you stay still. You do not react. You do not chase after their approval. You do not perform to be liked. And in that stillness, you reclaim control. This is what Jung described as the withdrawal of projection, the moment you stop throwing your inner world outward in search of recognition, and instead guard it like a deep well no one else can touch. Your silence is no longer passive, it becomes deliberate. It sharpens your vision, refines your words, and teaches you the wisdom of speaking only when it matters. At first, you feared silence would push people away, but then you discovered that those who left were never loyal to you. They were only loyal to the way you made them feel. True connection does not demand constant proof. It does not collapse in the absence of noise. Silence, instead, becomes a signal. It tells you, my energy is mine to protect. And with that, a new kind of peace arises. You no longer feel lighter because life got easier, but because you have become selective about what you let touch you. You begin to notice which conversations drain you and which ones bring life back into your spirit. You no longer hand out pieces of yourself to anyone who asks. You learn to save your depth for those who can truly hold it. But silence also poses a question. If silence is a weapon, then when should it be wielded, and when must it be broken? For silence can protect you, but it can also isolate you if carried too far. And that tension leads us to the next chapter, the economy of emotions, where you learn not just when to speak, but where to invest the limited currency of your heart. You are not cold. You are simply done pretending to care about what no longer touches your heart. There comes a point in awakening when you realize that emotions are not limitless. They are not infinite air to be given away freely. They are a form of currency, a sacred energy with a cost, and not everyone deserves to spend it. Once, you were always available, always ready to listen, to comfort, to show up, to hold together relationships even when your soul was exhausted. You replied out of politeness. You smiled to keep peace. You carried burdens that were not yours, and you believed that this was love. But over time, you burned out. Not because you were weak, but because you gave without choosing, because you invested your energy in places that only consumed it. Carl Jung described this as psychic energy, the subtle current that fuels consciousness itself. Every time you listen to someone's pain, every time you absorb their shadows, every time you stretch yourself to hold space for what they refuse to face, you are spending from that current. And living long enough as the one who understands eventually reveals a hard truth. Not everyone in pain truly seeks healing. Some only want you as a temporary drug, a brief relief before returning to the same destructive patterns. You shine your light into their darkness, but they never open their eyes. And only you are left carrying the weight of what you've seen. And so, a shift begins. You start calculating, not in money, but in emotion. Who really listens, and who only unloads? Who is willing to grow, and who just wants you to keep playing the same role? Who nourishes you, and who quietly drains you? Perhaps you've noticed this in your own life. Have you ever given too much of yourself to a relationship, only to realize it left you empty? If so, share it in the comments. Your story may be the mirror someone else needs to recognize the same truth. From that point on, you stop replying to every message just to be polite. You stop pouring energy into connections that no longer breathe. You begin trimming away the ties that leave you scattered and tired. And yes, people will call you cold, but you know better. You're not cold, you're awake. You now see what you once ignored. Emotions are not free air, they are assets. Invest poorly, you lose yourself. Invest wisely, and you grow. You once believed love had no limits, but Jung warned, consciousness requires energy, and energy must be protected, not from hatred, but from overgiving. Some who once felt close are now only names in memory, not because you are ungrateful, but because you finally understood that not everyone from your past deserves a seat in your present. You once tried to be everything, understanding, accommodating, endlessly available, but the cost was far greater than anyone saw, because true depth cannot coexist with dispersion. Depth requires fewer. Depth requires chosen. And as you learn to let go, something strange happens. You begin to feel more deeply, not less. Not because you have become hardened, but because you refuse to waste your heart on what is false. No more polite conversations to keep appearances. No more hollow reactions to shallow stories. No more stretching yourself to maintain connections that no longer live. You let them fall away, and instead of sadness, you feel lighter. They may call you distant. You smile. They do not know that the only reason you guard so fiercely is because you love so deeply. You have been drained, and now you have learned to bleed slower. You do not need to be understood. You only need peace. And so silence becomes your response, not as punishment, but as preservation. You return to yourself. No noise, no performance, no need to prove. Because now you know peace is an asset, and no one has the right to spend it carelessly. But in that silence, another paradox begins to rise. What happens when your very clarity makes you no longer belong anywhere? When your mind moves at a pace the collective cannot follow. That is the reality of cognitive exile, and it is where we turn next. You can stand in a crowded room and still feel like you are standing alone in the desert. You tried to belong, to blend, to soften your voice, to smile more, to speak less, hoping that no one would notice the difference. But the less you showed, the more distant you became. Because the difference is not in your words, it is in how you see. Your perception has become a map others cannot read. You notice things they overlook: the subtle power plays, the quiet manipulations, the hunger for validation wrapped in charm. You don't want to scan, you don't choose to analyze, but your mind refuses to turn off. It reads the room like radar, and what it picks up builds a distance you cannot undo. It is not pride that separates you, it is clarity. You can no longer pretend to believe what you see through. You can no longer smile freely at words that drip with hidden shadows. You can no longer return to blindness, and because of that, you no longer truly belong. Carl Jung described this as the confrontation with the unconscious. The moment you see, not only through others, but also through yourself. From that moment forward, you cannot go back. You become a stranger in the very world you once called home. You sense how a story will end before anyone else does. But when you speak, you are labeled negative. You detect manipulation dressed as kindness, but when you reveal it, you are called cold. So you hold it in, not out of fear, but out of understanding. They are not ready to see what you already see. And so you sit among friends, translating not their words, but the psychology beneath them. You hear sentences, but you feel the trauma behind them. You see smiles, but you sense the grief hiding underneath. And little by little, you grow tired. Not tired of understanding, but tired of being understood by no one. You did not choose this exile. It is simply the cost of not faking who you are. As a child, you may have believed that if you were wise enough, kind enough, you would be fully loved. But awakening has shown you another truth. The more you understand, the more isolated you become. Not because people hate you, but because they don't know how to connect to a mind that has moved beyond the collective pace. You stop sharing your truth because it is either misunderstood or ignored. You withdraw, not from fear, but from clarity. This is no longer ordinary loneliness. It is cognitive exile. To exist among people, yet live on a plane they cannot touch. To speak, yet never be heard at the depth you meant. To listen, yet never be reached at the place you are holding open. To live while translating life into a language no one else speaks. And finally, you understand. You are not strange. You are simply in a stage where your mind is learning to survive alone. You no longer try to blend. You hold distance not as defense but as protection for the most sacred thing you have, your clarity. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But the price of that privilege is seasons of life where no one else understands who that is. Perhaps you are not ready to explain all that you see, but you are learning that exile is not punishment. It is refinement. You are not being cast out, you are being purified. And if you can hold your clarity even when no one listens, you are living a courage most will never dare. Have you ever felt this? That you were surrounded by people, yet alone, in what you saw and knew? Share it in the comments. You may find that others are living in this quiet exile too. But another paradox waits ahead. What happens when you not only see deeply, but also feel deeply, and the weight of both becomes too heavy to carry? That is where the journey takes us next. You are not rejected because you are wrong. You are rejected because you see too much. You are not misunderstood because you are unclear. You are misunderstood because you are too clear. There will be times when you speak with honesty, and instead of being welcomed, you are pushed aside. Not because of your tone, not because of your attitude, but because your words forced others to see themselves. And that is what most people fear the most. You thought honesty would build bridges. You thought sincerity would be honored. Instead, you found yourself left behind by those who once called you friend, family, even love. You asked yourself, did I go too far? Was I too sensitive? But slowly, you realized the truth. You were not cast out for being wrong. You were cast out for being right too soon, for saying aloud what others were not ready to admit. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And when you live honestly, you become a mirror, not by choice, but by presence. When you refuse to join their games, you reveal that they are playing one. When you choose truth over comfort, you expose the small lies upon which they built their lives. And so, without effort, you become a threat. Not by force, but by clarity. They do not hate you. They hate the part of themselves you awaken. They do not avoid you. They avoid what you represent. A life of depth that demands courage. The more awake you become, the lonelier you feel. The clearer your sight, the heavier your silence. Jung called this individuation, the lifelong path of becoming yourself by stepping away from the collective self. And with every step, you lose something, a person, a group, a label, a familiar belonging. But with every loss, you also gain something greater, a sharper truth, a deeper self. You begin to understand that hurt does not mean you are off track. It means you are walking alone, but awake. Misunderstanding is not a failure of communication. It is the natural consequence of clarity. You no longer fit the rhythm of the collective. You no longer fake the tone of the crowd. You cannot shrink yourself just to soothe others. And so, you let them label you. Too much, too deep, too different. Not to rebel, but because you have outgrown pretending. Nietzsche once wrote, "And those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music." You hear the music, even when the world only hears noise. You don't need everyone to understand you. You only need to remain loyal to what you see. You don't need permission to exist. You only need the courage to hold your clarity, even when it costs you belonging. Rejection, then, is no longer a wound. It is proof that you are walking at a different rhythm, one that many cannot hear yet. Have you felt this? That rejection was not an ending, but a confirmation. If so, remember, every time you are misunderstood, you are being shaped into someone truer. Every time you are left behind, you are being refined, because rejection is not failure. It is evidence that you have chosen a path others may not yet dare to walk. And in that truth lies the reward, the solitude that reveals who you really are. And this leads us to the final step, the revelation that solitude is not emptiness, but presence. That disappearing is not weakness, but return. It is here, in the silence of solitude, that your truest self finally speaks. Solitude as revelation. In the beginning, solitude feels like a wound. Empty rooms echo too loudly. The silence feels heavy, like a punishment for being too different. You long for voices, for company, for proof that you are not alone. But slowly, something shifts. What once felt like emptiness begins to feel like presence. What once felt like abandonment begins to feel like return. You realize that solitude is not the absence of others. It is the presence of yourself. In solitude, the masks fall away. You are no longer performing to be liked, no longer bending to be accepted, no longer diluting your truth to be safe. For the first time, you are whole, not because someone finally saw you, but because you stopped leaving yourself behind. Carl Jung spoke of this as individuation, the sacred process of becoming who you truly are. And solitude is where the final stage unfolds. It is not the prison of the outcast, but the temple of the authentic. The silence that once frightened you now becomes the soil where your true self takes root. You begin to notice how stillness heals. Your nervous system slows. Your thoughts, once scattered by the demands of others, begin to find order. What once felt like unbearable isolation becomes fertile ground. Ideas grow. Insights bloom. Your soul speaks in a language you can finally hear. And in that moment, you understand. You were never truly lonely. You were being cleared. Emptied of noise, of false ties, of borrowed roles. Emptied so that what is real could remain. Have you felt this? That solitude, instead of draining you, began to reveal you. That being alone was not punishment, but permission. If this speaks to you, share your reflection in the comments. Your words may give courage to someone who still fears the silence they are living in now. Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." In solitude, you stop chasing the dream of being understood by everyone, and you awaken to the truth of being aligned with yourself. You are not missing out. You are moving inward. You are not disappearing. You are finally arriving. And the rejection, the exile, the silence, they were not endings. They were initiations. Each loss was a doorway. Each goodbye was an unveiling. Each season of solitude was the quiet hand of life, shaping you back into yourself. And here lies the final revelation. Solitude is not emptiness. It is abundance. It is not silence. It is clarity. It is not exile. It is return. Alone, you are not lacking. You are complete. Alone, you are not abandoned. You're at home. So when the world calls you too quiet, too distant, too strange, remember this. Solitude is not the absence of life. It is the ground where life begins again. Solitude as revelation. In the beginning, solitude feels like a wound. Empty rooms echo too loudly. The silence feels heavy, like a punishment for being too different. You long for voices, for company, for proof that you are not alone. But slowly, something shifts. What once felt like emptiness begins to feel like presence. What once felt like abandonment begins to feel like return. You realize that solitude is not the absence of others. It is the presence of yourself. In solitude, the masks fall away. You are no longer performing to be liked, no longer bending to be accepted, no longer diluting your truth to be safe. For the first time, you are whole. Not because someone finally saw you, but because you stopped leaving yourself behind. Carl Jung spoke of this as individuation, the sacred process of becoming who you truly are. And solitude is where the final stage unfolds. It is not the prison of the outcast, but the temple of the authentic. The silence that once frightened you now becomes the soil where your true self takes root. You begin to notice how stillness heals, your nervous system slows, your thoughts, once scattered by the demands of others, begin to find order. What once felt like unbearable isolation becomes fertile ground. Ideas grow, insights bloom. Your soul speaks in a language you can finally hear, and in that moment, you understand. You were never truly lonely. You were being cleared, emptied of noise, of false ties, of borrowed roles, emptied so that what is real could remain. Have you felt this? That solitude, instead of draining you, began to reveal you? That being alone was not punishment, but permission. If this speaks to you, share your reflection in the comments. Your words may give courage to someone who still fears the silence they are living in now. Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." In solitude, you stop chasing the dream of being understood by everyone, and you awaken to the truth of being aligned with yourself. You are not missing out. You are moving inward. You are not disappearing. You are finally arriving. And the rejection, the exile, the silence, they were not endings. They were initiations. Each loss was a doorway. Each goodbye was an unveiling. Each season of solitude was the quiet hand of life, shaping you back into yourself. And here lies the final revelation. Solitude is not emptiness, it is abundance. It is not silence, it is clarity. It is not exile, it is return. Alone, you are not lacking. You are complete. Alone, you are not abandoned. You are at home. So when the world calls you too quiet, too distant, too strange, remember this: solitude is not the absence of life. It is the ground where life begins again. Thank you for walking with me through this journey of listening and reflection. If you have stayed until the very end of this video, it means that within you there is a deep longing. The longing to live truthfully. The longing to walk the path of clarity and inner strength. I want to leave you with a blessing. May you have the courage to remain faithful to your truth, even when the world is not ready. May the silence you face never feel like abandonment, but like a homecoming to the essence of who you are. If something in this video touched your heart, I invite you to write in the comments, "I choose to return to myself." When you write these words, it is not just a phrase, it is a commitment within your mind, a quiet vow that you are ready for change, ready to live in alignment with your deepest self. And don't forget to subscribe so you will not miss the journeys ahead, where together we will continue to explore the hidden layers of the soul through the wisdom of Carl Jung and many other great thinkers. Once again, thank you for listening. May peace dwell in your heart, may clarity guide your mind, and may you walk with strength on the path of becoming your true self. I will see you in the next video.